What I want to tell you is your voice matters. You're here for a reason. You're important and you matter. And whatever it is that wants to emerge through you, there's a delivery system for it. Hello, everyone. I'm Cynthia James. I'm the host of Women Awakening with Cynthia James, the podcast. And I'm on here today because I really wanted to share with you an answer to questions I've been getting for quite a while. People want to know why I'm doing this podcast. Women want to know, why is it important to me? Why does it matter to me? And so I decided to do a two-part video for you. And the first one is I just want to talk a little bit about my own personal journey, because part of what is happening here is personal. I grew up in a very challenging childhood, lots of abuse, lots of trauma, an alcoholic father, a pedophile, wife-beating stepfather, 5 generations of women who came on the planet and left abused, traumatized, overweight, depressed, and ill. And so I didn't know that there was any other way of living. I didn't know that this thing in me, this creativity that lived in me, that wanted to express fully, had validity. I didn't think that there was a possibility for me to have a life where I could thrive. And so it took me a very long time to find my voice. And by finding my voice, what I mean is not the actual sound, but it means to the expression of who I've come here to be, of how powerful I am as an individual. I know that right here, that there's something within me that is mirroring something within you. That divine feminine energy that's powerful, dynamic, and mighty. So I struggled a lot. I pushed a lot to move forward because there was something in me that said, this is not my destiny. This is not who I've come here to be. And so I would have wins along the way. I traveled around the world. I sang. I became an actress. I was the first Lexi on Days of Our Lives. I did a lot of things. But what would happen is I'd rise and then I'd fall. And then I'd rise and then I'd fall. Because what was happening is I wasn't completely trusting and sure that I belonged, that I mattered. And so I was working in a spiritual community. I was doing what I considered was my dream job, and I was very tired. My husband kept saying, you should go to a doctor. And I'm like, no, I'm just pushing a little bit because I need to get through this, but I'm doing everything I love. But it persisted. So finally I go to the doctor and I say, okay, what is happening here? And he says, I want you to look at these numbers. Now, when a doctor says that to you, you know there's something is up. And he says, you are headed towards Addison's disease. And I'm like, what is that? And he said, basically, it's adrenal failure. And you need to quit your job. And I'm like, I'm not quitting my job. I love my job. He said, well, then you better change your lifestyle. And so I went to the leader and I said, I need some time off. And he said, no, you're going to take a sabbatical because you're playing with fire here and I'm not going to support you. So he asked me to take 3 months. And in that 3 months, let me tell you this, when you have no distractions, when you have no phones, no appointments, no running around, no teaching, none of that, what happens is you are left with yourself. Now, I've been meditating for 40 years, so it wasn't like I didn't know how to be still. But when you don't have distractions around you, what happens is you are forced to go in. And what I discovered, and what many women I know are discovering, is that we work to be validated. We show up to be validated, to be loved, to be honored, to be respected. And because of that, we give ourselves away. So I decided during this time that I was going to write a book, and the book was called I Choose Me, The Art of Being a Phenomenally Successful Woman at Home and at Work. And I started writing all the ways and all the times I'd given myself away, and most of them were crisis points. So I started interviewing other women that I knew, and they did the exact same thing. They were giving themselves away. I also discovered that in the early 1900s, women were still property, and the expectation was that we cared for the spouse, for the family, for the home. And if we were outside of the home, we were to do similar kinds of things. And the message was put others first, take care of others first. And if you do that, then you are okay and you will be loved. If you don't do that, then you are selfish. So, and that was an enculturation that had been going on for millennia. And so we came onto the planet, so many of us carrying that energy and that messaging. So I write this book and I put it out. And in my meditations, because I have a very strong spiritual practice, in my meditations, I kept hearing, it's time to move on. It's time to leave. It's time to shift. Now, I was in resistance. I did not want to do that. I was like, well, why would I want to do that? I love what I'm doing. But it was persistent to the point that at one point, it was like an audible voice saying, you are done here. So I have learned on some level to be obedient. And so I'm like, okay, so I give my notice and we set up a 6-month exit strategy. And I do not know what I'm doing. I do not know what I am to do. So I'm told in my messaging to get an office. So I get an office with 2 other people. I have no clients and I have no plan. So this is an act of faith. And so I go in, and I remember reading about a man named Joel Goldsmith who had at one point been told to get an office and to start supporting people, but he had no plan either. And so he didn't even have furniture. So he sat on the floor and he meditated for hours and hours. And by the time he left the planet, he was seeing many people a day and healings were happening. Well, I do know how to meditate, but I was not going to sit on the floor. So I decorated this office and I meditated and people started to come. I wasn't doing marketing because I didn't even know what business I would be marketing. I simply meditated and asked for the right people to come that I could support. Now, I had gone through a spiritual psychology program, a master's degree program. And so I had certain skills, and I had a program that was created called emotional integration, but I didn't know how to make it into a business. So I used the techniques when people came to me, and then they would refer other people, and they would refer other people. At one point, I decided, okay, I need to grow this. And so I got in a leadership program and I learned some things and I started to create a team. And the team said to me, are you aware that the majority of women that follow you are seeking things similar to you? In fact, 80% of the people that follow you are women. I was like, no, I didn't know that. And they said, maybe you should start marketing to these women. And so I did. We started doing more social media. And sure enough, more clients came, more people signed up for my mailing list, more people started coming to my social media. But the thing is like, how was I going to get women to understand that they could choose themselves, that they could honor themselves, that they could trust themselves, that they could open to themselves? And so I said, I need to take a deeper dive. So what caused me to shift? And what caused me to shift was when there's a crisis, or when you hit a point, kind of like my adrenal thing, then you are at a choice point. You get to choose to be more loving, more kind, more caring, more open, more vulnerable, more aware, more awake, or you get to go back into old patterns, old ways of being, creating relationship challenges, financial challenges, and creating work challenges because you keep saying yes to the things that don't serve you, don't support you, don't lift you. So for me, it was like, all right, Cynthia, what are you going to do? I started reading the stories in the book. And it was so incredible because each one of those people had had a crisis moment. Each one of those people had to come to a time when they said yes to what they loved, what they desired, to their own purpose, the purpose that was encoded within them, that they came with. And so when the thought started to come to create a podcast, I'm like, I don't know how to do a podcast, but it kept coming. And so I reached out to some people, and a man came back and said, I can help you do a podcast. And so at first, I just started interviewing women I knew, and I wanted to know what was their awakening and what were they doing with that awakening? Because for them, the awakening was, how do I move into service, not just for myself, but for other people? So these women started referring other women that referred other women, that then booking agents came and referred their clients, to the point where now we have interviewed over 285 women. But this is the thing that's so important about this. Finding my voice ultimately then supported other people in finding their voice, finding what lit them up, what they were passionate about, what was exciting for them, what ignited them, so that they could then start to move their energy, their gifts in the direction of those things. And they could start moving away from patterns and behaviors that no longer served them, that kept them captive to an old way of being. So for me, finding my voice, was really opening. So when the pandemic came, I was nothing to do, just like everybody else. I had shut down my office. I did move my clients to virtual, so I did have Zoom, but there was something else moving in me. And so here now, we're not allowed to go anyplace, and I get in my meditation, write a book. And I'm like, I already wrote another book. It was actually my third book, but it wouldn't leave me alone. And I said, okay, what is the name of this book? And the name of the book was, Does My Voice Matter? And I'm like, wow. And so I just started writing. There was no intention about what I was going to do with this book. I just started writing. And what unfolded was it became like memoir-esque. And when I say memoir-esque, it was like I was writing my story. Every decade of my life, I've been on the planet 7 decades. And so it was like, what was happening culturally? What choices was I making? How was I moving forward? What lessons was I learning? And then at the end of each chapter, I would share the lessons, and then I would give tools for the people who are reading the book to say, here are some tools that could help you if this is something that you're going through. So I work on this for months, and finally, the book is complete, but I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. So I had written other books. I knew that you wrote a book proposal, and I sent it out to a couple of agents, and it was like, no. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to let it sit there. And I will tell you, though, as I was writing the book, there was a lot of emotion. There was a lot emerging within me, a lot of feelings, a lot of regrets, a lot of understanding of why I made certain choices. So I'm doing my podcast, and a woman had emailed me that had been early on in the podcast, said she had another book and she wanted to be on the podcast. And so I was like, of course, because I really want to support women in bringing their voices forward. So I do the interview with her, and at the end of the interview, she says to me, are you writing another book? And I was like, no. And she said, are you sure? I keep getting this feeling. She said, well, I would love to introduce you to my publisher. I said, well, I did write something, but I don't even know if it's publishable. And she said, well, let me introduce you. So I said, okay. And she does an email. We introduce each other and we get on. And And the woman says, well, please send me your proposal. And so I do. And a few days later, she comes back and she says, we would like to greenlight this for you. And I was like, really? And it was a surprise because I had sent it to Hay House, who had said, you have a great voice, you're a great writer, but you don't have a big enough audience for us to publish you. So, it was kind of like, wow, a punch in the stomach. So this woman coming back so quickly and saying, oh, there's value here. This is important. And so I signed on with a company called She Writes, and Brooke Warner is the person who is the founder. Well, what happened is they told me, this was 2021, that they wanted it to come out in 2022. And I'm like, okay. So I'm working on it. I get it in and the editor starts working with me. And my girlfriend had just done an album and I called her up to support her and say, this is so great. And we had a great conversation. And then she says, are you doing another album? I'm like, no. And she goes, are you sure? I keep feeling like you're getting another album. And I'm like, no. She said, well, anyway, you should meet the brothers Corin. And I'm like, who are they? And she says, they're producers and they're singers and they're songwriters and they're amazing. And they helped me do my album. And I go, I'm not going to be doing that right now. I got to get this book out. And so while she's talking to me, she is sending an email to the brothers Corin. And I say, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you want to connect, but I'm busy. And they said, well, at least just have a quick Zoom call. It's like, okay. So we get on. Now, this is what I want to tell you all. I have composed over 50 songs, and I've recorded over 35, and I do not read music. And as I'm having this conversation with them, they say, we're not interested in people sitting down at a keyboard or having a pen in their hand and writing. We're interested in supporting people to open up and receive what the universe wants to give them. Really? And so this inner voice says, yes, do this. So what do? I sign up and I work with these guys for 3 months and I come out with this album called Chosen. And every song on the album is a download and every song on the album is a reflection of my life. And then I realize, oh my goodness, the album is mirroring the book. And so in August of 2022, both came out. The album Chosen and the book, Does My Voice Matter? What I want you to know is that the response was incredible, but more importantly, what happened within me is an opening, a joy, and a freedom that said, oh, my voice does matter. All these decades, I've been working to get to that knowing my voice matters. And what I want to tell you is your voice matters. You're here for a reason. You're important. And you matter. And whatever it is that wants to emerge through you, there's a delivery system for it. So when I do this part 2 of this, I will talk to you about some of the things I've learned and some of the journey that I took to bring my voice to a whole nother level. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon.